The scorching Arizona sun baked the canyon walls as Jeremiah Carter guided his creaking wagon through Devil's Pass. His wife Eleanor sat rigid beside him, her sun-bleached bonnet hiding the fear in her eyes. In the wagon bed, their 9-year-old daughter Daisy hummed to her rag doll, blissfully ignorant of the tension thickening the air, like desert heat. Jeremiah's calloused fingers twitched near his Colt revolver. Every settler knew the stories. Last month, the Miller family vanished near these very rocks, leaving behind nothing but a shattered wagon wheel and a single moccasin print. "Papa, my stomach's growlin' louder than a grizzly." Daisy piped up her voice, slicing through the silence. Eleanor wordlessly handed her the last biscuit from their dwindling supplies, hard as a river stone. Daisy nibbled it like a squirrel, savoring every crumb. Frontier kids learned young waste, nothing, not even a prayer. Then Jeremiah saw them shadows, morphing into warriors along the canyon rim. A dozen more. Their ponies moved like ghosts over the red rock feathers catching the light. The lead rider, a broad-chested man with a scar splitting his brow, like lightning-locked eyes with Jeremiah. Time froze. Eleanor gasped, clutching Daisy to her chest. Here's where most men would have reached for their rifles. But Jeremiah had seen enough bloodshed to last 3 lifetimes. Instead, he did something that'd make his cattle-drinking buddies call him soft. He raised his empty hands, palm up. The scarred warrior tilted his head. Then came the twist no one expected. "Your child," he said in rough English, pointing to Daisy's biscuit. "She eats like the winter sparrow. Take this." From his saddlebag, he tossed a woven pouch. Inside dried venison and pinole cakes. Eleanor's tears cut tracks through the dust on her cheeks as Daisy, bold as brass, held up her own crumbly offering. Trade. A chuckle rumbled through the warriors. The scarred man accepted Daisy's deal with a solemn nod. As they melted back into the canyon, Jeremiah realized the truth. Sometimes courage wears the face of a hungry little girl with a heart bigger than the whole damn territory. And hatred, well, it don't stand a chance against a child's innocence and a biscuit offered in trust. Funny how the West wasn't one with bullets after all. The scarred warrior, who Jeremiah now realized was Chief Iron Bear, locked eyes with Daisy as she clutched her biscuit. Behind him, a younger warrior named Red Hawk gripped his tomahawk, his nostrils flaring like a stallion scenting blood. The circle of warriors tightened around the wagon, their ponies stamping impatiently. Jeremiah's gut twisted. He'd seen that look before, the same feral hunger in a wolf's eyes just before it lunged. Then Daisy did the unthinkable. She scrambled onto the wagon seat, her sun-bleached curls bouncing, and held out her pitiful biscuit to Iron Bear like it was a gold nugget. "You hungry, mister?" Red Hawk snarled something in Lakota, but Iron Bear silenced him with a glance. For a heartbeat, the canyon held its breath. Then the chief did something that'd make the whiskey-soaked storytellers in Tombstone choke on their lies. He reached out and broke the biscuit in half, keeping one piece and handing the other back to Daisy. "Trade," he rumbled in broken English, nodding to the venison pouch still in her lap. Eleanor nearly fainted. Jeremiah's trigger finger went numb. And Red Hawk, well, let's just say his face looked like he'd swallowed a cactus. Here's where the story takes a turn. Even the devil didn't see coming. A muffled whimper cut through the tension. From the brush tumbled a scrawny coyote pup fur, matted one ear torn, limping straight toward Daisy. The warriors stiffened. Coyotes were tricksters in their stories, bad omens. But Daisy, being Daisy, immediately plopped her biscuit half in the dirt for the pup. Iron Bear's eyes flickered. "Your food." "Gone." Daisy just shrugged. "He's hungrier than me." And that's when the mighty chief of the Lakota did the second impossible thing. That afternoon, he laughed. A deep rumbling sound that shook the canyon walls loose. Red Hawk looked downright scandalized. Woman Iron Bear said to Eleanor, tossing her a second pouch, this one full of medicinal herbs, for the child's cough. Jeremiah hadn't even noticed Daisy's sniffles. As the warriors melted back into the rocks, Red Hawk lingered, glaring at Jeremiah. "Next time, We take more than biscuits." Jeremiah tipped his hat. "Next time, bring honey. Makes 'em go down easier." The West wasn't tamed by guns or glory. It was tamed by a scrawny girl, a half-starved coyote, and the dumb luck of running into the one warrior chief with a soft spot for sass. Funny how history forgets the little things. The biscuit treaties, the coyote truces, the moments when men had to choose between being right or being human. Iron Bear's fingers tightened around his war lance as Red Hawk spat into the dust. "We take their wagon," the younger warrior hissed in Lakota. "Our children cry with empty bellies while theirs eat our meat." The other warriors grunted in agreement, their ponies shifting like storm clouds gathering. Jeremiah felt Eleanor's nails dig into his arm. Daisy, blissfully unaware of the brewing storm, was now sharing her venison with the coyote pup, who'd promptly fallen asleep on her foot. Then came the moment that split the world in two. Iron Bear dismounted in one fluid motion and strode toward the wagon. Jeremiah's heart hammered so loud he was sure the chief could hear it. But the warrior didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he pointed at Daisy's sunburnt knees, peeking through her patched dress. "Your child," he said slowly, "has the marks of the starving time." Jeremiah blinked. How could this painted warrior recognize what most white men ignored? Here's where God, or fate, or maybe just dumb luck, threw a lit match into the gunpowder. The coyote pup suddenly yelped and bolted straight toward Red Hawk's pony. The skittish horse reared, sending the warrior tumbling into the dirt with a curse that'd make a trapper blush. Daisy gasped. "Mister, your arm." A fresh wound glistened on Red Hawk's bicep, a gash from a recent battle. Without hesitation, Eleanor yanked her last clean petticoat from their meager supplies and pressed it to the injury. "Hold still," she ordered her healer's instincts, overriding fear. Red Hawk froze, staring at this pale woman who dared touch a warrior. Iron Bear watched stone-faced as Eleanor worked her hands steady, despite the rifle barrels now pointed at her head. "Your woman," Iron Bear said to Jeremiah, "has medicine hands." A bitter laugh escaped Jeremiah. "Yeah, well, her medicine hands just sewed up Bill Hickok after a saloon brawl last month. Didn't stop him from shooting 2 men the next day." The twist. Iron Bear threw back his head and laughed a sound so unexpected that 3 warriors lowered their bows in confusion. "This one," he said, clapping a stunned Red Hawk on the shoulder, "fights like a wildcat, but whimpers like a pup over a scratch." The tension shattered like cheap whiskey glass. Even Red Hawk's scowl faltered when Daisy solemnly offered him her ragdoll for the hurt. As the sun dipped below the canyon rim, Iron Bear made his decision. "You pass," he told Jeremiah, "but tell your people next time, bring medicine, not bullets." He tossed a small leather pouch into the wagon inside bitterroot for fever and yarrow for wounds. And that's how the Carter family became the only settlers in Arizona history to pay their toll with a child's kindness, a coyote's mischief, and the unlikeliest peace treaty ever struck a warrior chief's sense of humor. The West wasn't won by the fastest gun or the sharpest knife. It was won by moments like these when enemies became human and humanity became the only law that mattered. Iron Bear's face might as well have been carved from canyon rock as he pointed to the Carters' meager supplies. "All stays. You walk." The words fell like a judge's gavel. Eleanor's breath hitched. Without their wagon, Daisy wouldn't survive 3 days in this scorched hellscape. Red Hawk was already unlashing their water barrel when the coyote pup, now christened Biscuit by Daisy, suddenly darted between his legs. The warrior stumbled, kicking up dust that coated his freshly polished knife. "Devil creature!" he roared. Daisy, ever the diplomat, marched right up to Iron Bear and thrust her grubby hands toward his face. Not with fear, not with tears, but with the unshakable confidence of a child who'd decided this grown-up nonsense had gone on long enough. "Here," she announced, dropping 2 objects into his calloused palm, the last crumbly bite of her venison cake, and the tiny blue bead from her doll's eye. "It's my lucky bead. Mama says it protects folks. Now let's pause here." In the grand tradition of the West, this was the moment when either A, guns would blaze, B, hearts would melt, C. Some damn fool would say exactly the wrong thing. Naturally, Red Hawk chose option C. The white child mocks us. He swung his tomahawk toward Daisy, only to have Iron Bear catch his wrist mid-air. The chief's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You strike an unarmed cub today-tomorrow, our sons become the monsters they call us. Then came the twist that'd make a penny dreadful novelist blush. Iron Bear reached into his own pouch and pulled out a carved wooden bear, a child's toy, worn smooth from handling. He pressed it into Daisy's hands alongside her bead. For protection, he grunted. Then he turned to Jeremiah, eyes sharp as flint. Take your wagon. Go fast. Tell your people. Here he flashed a grin that showed more gaps than teeth. We keep the coyote. As the warriors rode off, Biscuit trotting proudly beside Iron Bear's pony, Eleanor finally collapsed into sobs. Jeremiah just stared at the toy bear in Daisy's hands, the exact twin of one he'd seen in a gutted settler's wagon last winter. Daisy, of course, was already negotiating with the heavens. Can Biscuit visit for Christmas? I'll share my socks. And that's how the Carter family learned the oldest law in the West. Kindness is a currency even the fiercest warrior can't refuse, especially when it comes packaged with a blue bead, a coyote pup, and the stubborn love of a 9-year-old who didn't know she was supposed to be afraid. The real frontier wasn't out there in the wilds. It was in the space between a raised weapon and an outstretched hand. And on this day, in this canyon, a little girl with crumbs in her hair had crossed it. Daisy's grubby fingers didn't waver as she held out her pitiful offerings to Iron Bear. The venison crumb looked absurd in his battle-scarred palm, like a single grain of sand trying to quench a desert. Red Hawk's snarl cut through the silence like a bowstring. The white pup thinks we beg for scraps. Then came the sound that changed everything. A high, reedy whistle Daisy's attempt at mimicking the meadowlark call Iron Bear had made earlier. The note wobbled like a drunken cowboy, but it carried the unmistakable melody of the Lakota courting song. Eleanor nearly swallowed her tongue. Jeremiah's brain short-circuited. Even the warriors' horses flicked their ears in surprise. Iron Bear's eyebrows shot up. Who taught you this? Daisy beamed. Biscuit did. Well, he kinda yipped it when you cue the most awkward cultural exchange in frontier history. Red Hawk exploded. She mocks our ways. He lunged only to be clotheslined by Iron Bear's arm. The chief's shoulders began shaking. Not with anger, but with laughter so deep it rattled his bone chest plate. This one, he wheezed, wiping his eyes, has the courage of 10 warriors, and the musical talent of a sick jackal. The tension shattered like thin ice. Warriors who'd been ready to spill blood minutes ago were now clutching their sides. Daisy, delighted by her audience, took a dramatic bow and accidentally headbutted Iron Bear's knee. Easy little firecracker, he chuckled, rubbing the spot where her bonnet had smacked him. Then his expression sobered as he studied the blue bead in his palm. This is a trade, yes. Then I give you. He reached into his pouch and produced a tiny leather bundle. Unwrapped, it revealed a perfect arrowhead, the same flint his daughter had carried for protection. Eleanor's breath caught. This wasn't just a trinket, it was a piece of his soul. Red Hawk looked like he'd been struck by lightning. My chief, you can't. I am tired. Iron Bear interrupted his voice, suddenly ancient of trading only in death. He turned to Jeremiah. Take your wagon. Tell your people. Some borders are meant to be crossed. As the Lakota melted into the canyon shadows, Daisy clutched her new treasures and whispered, Papa, I think we just made a friend. Jeremiah stared at the arrowhead still warm from Iron Bear's hand, and realized the truth. The West wasn't won by force. It was won by moments like this when a child's off-key whistle bridged a canyon of hatred and a warrior chose mercy over vengeance. And as for Red Hawk, well, let's just say, he rode off muttering about the worst trade deal in tribal history, but even he couldn't hide the grudging respect in his eyes when Daisy blew him a kiss. Some victories don't need gunpowder. Sometimes all it takes is a crumb of venison, a terrible whistle, and the unshakable belief that even enemies can become kindred spirits. The real frontier, after all, was never about land. It was about the distance between one human heart and another. And on this day, in this sun-baked canyon, that distance had been crossed with nothing more than a child's fearless love. Iron Bear's calloused fingers closed around Daisy's crumb with the reverence of a man taking communion. The canyon held its breath. Even the ever-present desert wind seemed to pause mid-whisper. Red Hawk's tomahawk trembled in his grip, his face a thundercloud of betrayal. Then Daisy, bless her unpredictable heart, reached up and patted Iron Bear's cheek, leaving a dusty handprint on his war paint. "You got crumbs in your beard, mister." Cue the most dangerous case of the giggles in Lakota history. One warrior, a grizzled grandfather with eyes like smoked quartz, snorted, then choked, then burst into laughter so sudden it scared his horse into bucking. The domino effect was instantaneous. Warriors doubled over, tears streaming through their paint weapons, forgotten in the dirt. All except Red Hawk, who looked about ready to combust. Iron Bear wiped his beard with exaggerated dignity. "This child," he announced, "has the manners of a drunken porcupine." The laughter redoubled, but Red Hawk wasn't done. "You disgrace your daughter's memory," he shouted, voice cracking. The laughter died instantly. Iron Bear's face went stone cold. Daisy, sensing the shift, did what Daisy did best, the exact wrong thing, at exactly the right time. She scrambled onto the wagon seat and belted out the only Lakota words she knew, "Tankashkeya, hello friend." Silence. Then Iron Bear threw back his head and howled like a wolf. Not in anger, in release, in remembrance. Because those had been his little sparrow's first words, too. Red Hawk's tomahawk hit the dirt with a thud. "This is madness," he whispered. But his eyes were on Daisy, now really seeing her. The sunburned nose, the patched dress, the fearless joy that reminded him so painfully of his own little sister, taken by the same fever that stole Iron Bear's child. The twist came swift as a rattlesnake strike. From the back of the wagon, Biscuit, the coyote pup, let out a mournful yowl, right as a rattler slithered between Iron Bear's boots. Red Hawk moved faster than thought, snatching Daisy to safety, while Iron Bear pinned the snake with his spear. In the stunned silence that followed, Daisy peered at Red Hawk's tear-streaked face. "You're not so scary," she declared, and pressed her lucky bead into his palm. And that's how the Carter family became legend, not because they outran danger, but because a 9-year-old disarmed it with Crumb's terrible pronunciation and a coyote with impeccable timing. As the warriors rode away, Iron Bear turned for one last look. Jeremiah expected a warning, a threat. Instead, the chief touched 2 fingers to his heart, then to his lips, and finally, toward Daisy. The ancient sign, "For you are my kin." The West wasn't tamed by gunpowder and greed. It was tamed by moments like this, when enemies became family over shared laughter, a child's fearless love, and the humbling truth that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is admit he's wrong. And as for Red Hawk, well, let's just say that Lucky Bead was later seen tied to his lance right beside the eagle feathers. Some defeats, after all, are sweeter than victories. Iron Bear's voice rumbled like distant thunder as he wiped Daisy's crumb from his beard. "This child," he said, holding up the pitiful morsel, "just paid the bravest toll ever taken in Lakota lands." The warriors murmured, some in agreement, others in disbelief. Then came the moment that would be carved into legend. Red Hawk's tomahawk quivered in the air, his chest heaving with generations of rage. But before he could strike Biscuit, the coyote, that furry little agent of chaos, darted between his legs again, this time with a stolen prize. Red Hawk's own medicine pouch clenched proudly in his teeth. The warriors froze. Even the wind stilled. Daisy gasped. "Biscuit, bad dog. Give that back." She marched right up to the seething warrior, hands on hips like a tiny schoolmarm. "Mister, you gotta tie your bags tighter. Biscuit's a thief." Cue the most uncomfortable silence in frontier history. Then, Thunder Walker, The ancient warrior who'd lost 3 sons to settler bullets snorted, then chuckled, then roared with laughter so loud it startled a hawk from its perch. The spirits he wheezed, wiping tears from his leathery face, send a coyote pup to shame us all. Red Hawk's face cycled through emotions like a gambler's dice fury confusion. And finally, when Biscuit dropped the pouch at his feet with a proud yip, something dangerously close to amusement. Iron Bear seized the moment. "You call this child our enemy." He pointed to Daisy, who was now attempting to braid Biscuit's fur with disastrous results. "She disciplines her wolf better than you discipline your temper, Red Hawk." The tension snapped like a rotten saddle strap. Warriors who'd been ready to spill blood minutes ago were now chuckling as Daisy scolded the coyote in a perfect imitation of Eleanor's disappointed mother voice. But the real twist, Red Hawk knelt slowly, ceremoniously, and pressed his forehead to Daisy's. "Little sister," he murmured in Lakota, "your courage humbles me." Then he turned to Iron Bear and did something no warrior had ever done. He apologized. In front of everyone. As the warriors mounted up to leave, Iron Bear tossed one last gift into the wagon, a beautifully beaded water flask. "For the child," he told Jeremiah. "So she never thirsts, and never forgets." And that's how the Carter family rode out of Devil's Pass that day, not with stolen supplies, but with something far more valuable. A story that would spread faster than wildfire across the territory. A story of how a sunburnt girl, a thieving coyote, and a crumb of venison did what 1,000 armed men couldn't. They bridged the unbridgeable. The West wasn't won by might. It was won by moments like this, when enemies became brothers over shared laughter, when a child's innocence disarmed generations of hate, and when the bravest thing a man could do was admit. Maybe the world had room for more than one kind of people. As for Biscuit, well, let's just say he earned his place in Lakota legend that day, not as a trickster, but as the furry little peacemaker who stole a warrior's anger and returned his humanity. Daisy's question hung in the air like the last note of a church bell. The warriors shifted uncomfortably, their weapons suddenly feeling heavy in hands that had known nothing but battle for too long. Even Red Hawk's tomahawk arm drooped slightly, his rage momentarily derailed by the absurdity of this sunburnt child offering to feed her would-be killers. Then came the sound that broke the West wide open, a loud, unmistakable stomach growl from Thunderwalker's general direction. The old warrior's face remained stoic, but his belly had just declared mutiny. Daisy's eyes lit up. "See, I told you." She scrambled over Eleanor's protective grip and began rummaging through their near-empty supplies. Here's where history took a left turn at Albuquerque. What emerged from the Carter's food sack wasn't just pitiful. It was downright tragic. One shriveled apple with more bruises than flesh, a handful of cornmeal crawling with weevils, and the pièce de résistance, a single strip of jerky so old it could have marched with Custer. Daisy arranged this feast on the wagon seat with the solemnity of a French chef presenting foie gras. It's not much, she admitted, but we can share. Red Hawk made a noise halfway between a scoff and a sob. These weren't settlers, they were refugees. The realization hit him like a stray bullet. They'd been ready to slaughter people even poorer than their own starving tribe. Iron Bear's voice cut through the silence like a bowie knife. "You see now, Red Hawk. The enemy isn't always who we think." He picked up the fossilized jerky between 2 fingers and raised an eyebrow at Jeremiah. "This is food." Jeremiah shrugged. "Tastes better if you don't chew." And just like that, the spell was broken. Warriors who'd been ready to spill blood minutes ago were now passing around weevil-infested cornmeal like communion wafers. Thunderwalker even produced a pouch of pemmican. For the child, he grunted, though everyone noticed he took extra care with the portioning. But the real miracle, Red Hawk, still trembling with generations of righteous anger, found himself holding Daisy's shriveled apple. The girl beamed up at him. "That one's special. It's got a worm in it. Somewhere between the worm and the way she said it, like it was a bonus feature. Something in Red Hawk's chest cracked open. He sank to his knees in the dust, his war paint streaked with tears he'd sworn never to shed. Iron Bear placed a hand on his shoulder. The bravest warriors, he murmured, are those who know when to lay down their weapons. As the Lakota rode away, Daisy waved until her arm ached. Jeremiah noticed 3 things in quick succession. 1. Their wagon was untouched. Their supplies had somehow multiplied. 3. Biscuit was now wearing Red Hawk's beaded necklace like a conquering hero. The West wasn't won by force. It was won by moments like this, when a child's innocence exposed the absurdity of hatred, when enemies became allies over a shared meal of bug-ridden cornmeal, and when the strongest warriors proved to be those who dared to show mercy. And as for that wormy apple, let's just say Red Hawk kept the seeds, planted them near his sister's grave. Because some gifts, no matter how small, grow into legends. The distant thunder of hooves shattered the fragile peace like a shotgun blast. Jeremiah's blood ran cold as he recognized the lead rider, Buck Dutch Corrigan, a man whose hatred for the Lakota was only outmatched by his love for whiskey and trigger fingers. The posse's rifles glinted in the sun like a row of sharpened teeth. Daisy, blissfully unaware of the fresh danger, waved enthusiastically. New friends. Iron Bear's warriors moved as one, not for attack, but forming a protective circle around the wagon. Red Hawk's fingers twitched toward his tomahawk, then stopped when he saw Daisy's confused face. Here's where the West got turned upside down. Dutch reined in his horse-spitting tobacco juice that barely missed Thunderwalker's moccasins. Well, I'll be damned, he drawled, his beady eyes flicking between the warriors and the Carters. Jeremiah Carter consorting with hostiles. His gang chuckled, cocking their Winchesters with practiced menace. Iron Bear stepped forward, his voice deceptively calm. These people are under our protection. Dutch's grin revealed 3 missing teeth. Ain't that precious a redskin playin' sheriff? His finger hovered near the trigger. Now step aside before we... Mr. Corrigan. Every head swiveled to Daisy, who'd climbed onto the wagon seat like a tiny town crier. She held up the wormy apple core like a holy relic. You want to share? There's still 1 bite left. The canyon went dead silent. Even Dutch's horse seemed to sigh. Thunderwalker chose that moment to unleash a belch that'd make a grisly proud courtesy of Daisy's weevil-infested cornmeal. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like cannon fire. Dutch's face purpled. You eatin' their food now, Carter? Jeremiah shrugged. Better than eating lead. He nodded to the warriors. These men just spared our lives over a strip of jerky older than your granddaddy. Reckon that makes them better Christians than your whole posse put together. The twist came faster than a rattlesnake strike. Biscuit the coyote, now sporting Red Hawk's beads like war trophies, leapt into Dutch's saddle and promptly vomited half-digested pemmican onto the man's fancy boots. Chaos erupted. Dutch's horse bucked. His men scrambled. And in the confusion, Iron Bear did something that would become legend. He grabbed Dutch's rifle barrel and pressed it against his own chest. Shoot me, he challenged, and prove you're exactly what we fear. Dutch's finger trembled on the trigger, then went slack as Daisy's tiny hand tugged his pant leg. Mister, your boots are crying, and just like that, the fight drained out of Dutch Corrigan like whiskey from a broken bottle. He looked from the child to the warriors, to his own men, and saw the truth reflected in their shocked faces. He wasn't a hero, just a bully who'd ridden miles to pick a fight with starving people. As the humiliated posse slunk away, Thunderwalker spat in the dust. Settlers. Red Hawk surprised everyone, including himself, by adding, "Some ain't so bad." He nodded to Daisy, who was now trying to comfort Dutch's horse with what remained of her apple core. The West wasn't tamed by guns or glory. It was tamed by moments like this, when a child's innocence disarmed hatred, when enemies became protectors, and when the bravest thing a man could do was walk away from a fight he'd been itching to start. And as for Dutch, well, let's just say he was later seen buying supplies for a Lakota village, though he'd swear, till his dying day, it was just bad whiskey talkin'. Some defeats, after all, taste sweeter than victory. especially when served with a side of wormy apples and coyote vomit. The dust settled as Dutch's posse disappeared over the ridge, their curses fading faster than their courage had. Iron Bear turned to Jeremiah, his face unreadable. For a heartbeat, the canyon held its breath. Would this fragile peace shatter, now that the common enemy had fled? Daisy broke the silence with all the subtlety of a cannon shot. "Mr. Bear," she held up the mangled remains of her doll. "Can you fix Betsy?" Her arm came off when Biscuit played tug-o-war. The warriors stared. Thunderwalker's face contorted like he'd swallowed a live hornet until a snort escaped him. Then another. Soon the whole canyon echoed with laughter as Iron Bear, war chief of the Lakota, solemnly examined a ragdoll's injuries like a frontier surgeon. Here's where history took its final twist. Red Hawk stepped forward, his voice gruff. "For the child." He dropped a beautifully beaded, doll-sized moccasin into Daisy's lap. "So her. Betsy can walk in two worlds." The unspoken meaning hung heavy, just like Daisy would now walk between settler and Lakota worlds. Dutch's retreating gang chose that moment to fire one last parting shot, a wild rifle blast that ricocheted off the canyon walls. The bullet struck Iron Bear's feathered headdress, sending eagle feathers spiraling through the air like falling stars. Silence. Then chaos. Warriors knocked arrows. Jeremiah reached for his Colt, but Daisy always. Daisy squealed with delight as feathers rained down around her. "It's snowing pretty." She began chasing them, her laughter bouncing off the stone walls. The tension evaporated faster than whiskey in a desert sun. Iron Bear stared at his ruined headdress, then at the giggling child, and did something no living soul had ever witnessed. He shrugged. The spirits he deadpanned have terrible aim. As the Carters prepared to leave, Thunderwalker pressed a small pouch into Eleanor's hands. Real medicine, not the frontier whiskey most settlers called doctoring. For the cough, he grunted, having noticed what even Jeremiah hadn't: Daisy's rattling breaths each night. The farewell nearly broke Jeremiah's hardened heart. Iron Bear clasped his forearm warrior style, while Red Hawk, that fearsome warrior who'd wanted blood at sunrise, awkwardly patted Daisy's head, like she might bite. "Come back when you're taller," he muttered. "We'll teach you to shoot." And so the Carter family rolled west, their wagon lighter in supplies, but heavier in gifts: a doll's moccasin, a medicine pouch, and an arrowhead that would one day save Jeremiah's life in a blizzard. But the greatest gift, the story they carried, proof that sometimes the smallest heart can bridge the widest canyon. As for Biscuit, that wily coyote trotted alongside Iron Bear's horse for exactly 3 miles before vanishing into the sagebrush. Though Lakota hunters would swear for generations, they occasionally glimpsed a blue-beaded coyote dancing in the moonlight. The West wasn't tamed by gunpowder and greed. It was tamed by moments like this, when enemies became family over shared laughter and losses, when a child's innocence rewrote the rules of war, and when the bravest thing a man could do was admit maybe the world had room for more than one kind of magic. The wagon wheels creaked their farewell as the Carter family disappeared around the bend, leaving Iron Bear standing with Daisy's crumb still pinched between his calloused fingers. Red Hawk stared at it like it held the secrets of the universe. All this he muttered over a piece of bread even a jackrabbit wouldn't eat. Thunderwalker clapped him on the back hard enough to make him cough. No boy. Over a child who saw warriors when others see savages. He pointed to the canyon walls where Dutch's bullet had chipped the stone. Even the rocks remember today. 3 moons later, a battered cavalry patrol stumbled upon something that would become frontier legend: a lone cottonwood tree thriving in Devil's Pass, its roots watered by an underground spring no scout had ever mapped. Tied to its branches, a blue bead on elk sinew, a sun-bleached doll's arm, and the real kicker, a faded wanted poster for Dutch Corrigan, repurposed as a child's drawing of stick-figure warriors and settlers sharing a picnic. The cavalry captain, a man who'd once led raids on Lakota camps, found himself inexplicably pocketing the bead for luck. His hardened sergeant, without a word, left his tobacco pouch at the tree's base. Back at Fort Laramie, rumors spread of a blue-beaded coyote seen leading lost travelers to water. The Cheyenne called it the Laughing Guide. Settlers swore it was just some mangy stray. As for Daisy Carter, she grew up to open the first integrated school in the territory, where Lakota children learned multiplication alongside settler kids, and the most prized possession was a weathered arrowhead passed around for show and tell. The West wasn't tamed by gunfights or gold rushes. It was tamed by moments like these, when a child's crumb became a sacrament, when enemies became guardians, and when the land itself remembered that sometimes the smallest hearts write the biggest histories. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got something in my eye. Probably just dessert dust. Ahem. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales where the real frontier spirit shines through. And remember, folks, the next time life gives you stale bread, you might just be holding a miracle.